I'd never seen anything like this before, and being turned on to KSHE, Real Rock Radio, is in those days, there was 3 stations in the country. There was Little Rock KAY, MMS in Cleveland, and KSHE in St. Louis. To me, knowing the 3 stations, KSHE I thought was the bigger one. They did a lot more than the other stations did.
Without the intro.
No question that KSHE had an enormous effect on our popularity, not only through the sales that they were clearly generating in the St. Louis area, but they were influential on other stations, and there's this sort of bubble effect that once the word gets out and people start talking about it, that's money in my pocket.
KSHE Radio in St. Louis was playing Lady Put the Light on Me, and so I'd put the order in, and the records hit the warehouse. You can't imagine how many skids, 75,000 or 100,000 45s are, but it's a lot of skids, pallets of records that took up the warehouse. And we're getting ready to ship them out. And I get a phone call from Private Stock Records, and they go, "Greg, we're pulling the single." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "We're pulling the single, Lady Put the Light on Me." He goes, "Well, why? I haven't even, the record just hit the warehouse this week." He goes, "Yeah, I know, but KSHE Radio, Ted Hobbick at KSHE Radio in St. Louis is absolutely drilling a cut off the album called Martian Boogie, and we're going to pull it, we're going to release it, rush release it as a single." So I said, "Well, whoa, explain this to me once again." KSHE Radio, formidable radio station in the country, is playing the heck out of Martian Boogie, and we've got to release it as a single. And I said, "Well, who's Ted Hobbick?" He goes, "Well, he's the program director of the radio station." I said, "Fuck Ted Hobbick. I've got 100,000 copies of this record sitting on the floor, and we're going to pull it because one little radio station in St. Louis is playing Martian Boogie." And little did I learn that they took the records back, which was a big relief for me, obviously, and then we rush released Martian Boogie as a single.
Well, KSHE, what was interesting is that KSHE was so powerful and that there were artists who not only broke out of KSHE and out of the St. Louis market, but some of them, a few, never got to be anywhere as big anywhere else. So you'd have artists that are doing arenas in St. Louis that on the West Coast would be lucky to get a club gig.
But KSHE was what it was. And nobody's going to change that. Nobody. It's historical love. It's historical.
Great thing about AOR is you'd have a station like KSHE who they didn't really have some national person telling them what to play. They were St. Louis. This is what St. Louis wants to hear. And so they would go on and they would play like a whole side or they'd play the whole thing. And they didn't get in trouble for it, because they could talk to the people who were there in their neighborhoods and their city, and they knew the pulse of everyone. They also knew what was going on around the country, and they didn't want, Missouri to be left out. Everybody wants to be part of what that scene is. And there was just one great band after another. So it started getting a little bit harder to get on there because there was so much good music. But they were always very supportive and have remained supportive for Styx. And, it's much appreciated.
It would have never happened without, KSHE Radio. They were a one-of-a-kind, marvelous thing that really helped kickstart our career. Because it started in that region. Outside of a few college stations in Pennsylvania, nobody knew who we were, except in the Midwest. We were getting a lot of traction, and that started getting noticed as it spread beyond. So KSHE was instrumental in our career. And we will always have fond memories of St. Louis. And it's because of that. It's because of the radio station, because of all they did for us.
Well, those were different days. And, FM radio was king at the time. And it was kind of an open format. And people espoused that open format and were into it. So when word would get out, which of course it did very quickly, that we were doing a live broadcast, not only was the place full, not only was the Opera House full, because everybody knew that they were going to be on the radio, but also the people that couldn't get to the concert because it was sold out were sitting right there next to their radio, whether they're in their cars or whether they're at home hanging out and, and recreating. They got into it. So, and, we had a pretty good band all the way along the lines.
Actually, on our drive here, we were somewhere else. We had a 250-mile drive here. And as we got closer, I'm sitting up the front with Rodney, our bass player, and said, "Put KSHE on." And guess what came on? Slow Ride.
No.
Without DJs and radio stations like KSHE, I think the world would be a sadder place. Certainly, a bunch of us wouldn't have been anywhere near as successful as we have been. I think the world could do with more stations like KSHE.
KSHE plays a huge part in Little Feat's career, both as a business type thing, but more so personally to us. The station itself played our music for years and years. When Gary Bennett started playing our music, then he had Feats at 5, and we came back for Let It Roll. We were absolutely dumbfounded by the response we got in St. Louis. It was more than we could have ever imagined. And what it says about the radio station and the personalities like yourself that have worked there is the community itself. It's a tribute to an institution, which KSHE is. It's the oldest one in the country now that's playing rock and roll. We look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Yeah, there's some acts that play rock and roll. There's plenty that don't, right? But here we are with KSHE as a radio station that has stayed true to its roots. There's growth, of course, as there has to be in anything. But I got to salute you guys for who you are and what you're continuing to do. And it's touched everybody in Little Feat's heart. So thank you so much for that.